I have been through a lot these past 2 years. It all started on the 22nd of February, 2022. I was in my third year of college, in the middle of work experience, focusing on finishing a background for a kids show that was to earn RTE when I get a call from my dad. Everything went so quiet. I could feel pressure building in my ears when I realised that what I was listening to was my dad struggling to regulate his breathing as he told me that his father, my granddad, had been diagnosed with cancer. Before I even had a chance to take in what he said, he continued by saying that one of our dogs, Eddie, had to be put down that very same evening. I managed to get a week off of work placement. The drive back to the student accommodation was a blur as I realised that I was about to have my very last video call with Eddie. I had told my parents not to wait for me, as the drive back from Kerry to Limerick would have taken too long with rush hour traffic, and the last thing I wanted to do was to prolong his pain any further. When I saw him, he just looked so tired as my man cradled him. It hurt to see him go, but it's nice that the last image I have of him is him licking my dad's face. I said goodbye to my first dog that evening. It was from this day that I was about to be put through one of the most stressful periods of my life.
Anne-Marie, my favourite daughter-in-law, I'll be going in the 24th for good.
After my granddad got his diagnosis, he soon had to undergo some very invasive surgery in which his teeth, a section of his tongue and part of his jawbone were removed. He had to get a bone graft from his collarbone to replace what needed to be taken away. All of this greatly affected his ability to eat, to speak, and lift his arm past a certain height without aid. On top of that, the doctor said that if he were to ingest food normally, there was a chance of him aspirating, meaning that the food had a chance of going down the wrong tube, and then we'd be faced with a different set of problems. To combat these concerns, the doctors placed a peg into his stomach that allowed him to take nutrient bottles as a replacement for solid food. Recovery wasn't an easy road for him either. It took him 6 weeks to get discharged, and when he finally got home, he was miserable. There were days when you would try to have a conversation to distract him from his discomfort, and he would get angry as he struggled to pronounce his words. Even though you would be able to catch certain words and contextualise what he's saying, conversation would often end with him throwing his hands up in the air in frustration and dismissing you. We didn't care how he sounded. It didn't matter how many times it would have taken him to get across what he wanted to say. We were there to listen and help as best as we could. We're all familiar with facing the brunt of loved ones' frustrations, but we were patient for him. In his mind though, he couldn't heal quick enough, despite being in his late 70s. Would you blame him for how angry and depressed he became as he recovered? He had just had his whole life changed in a matter of weeks, and nobody could give him a solid answer as to when he'd get better. He'd often complain about his tongue feeling swollen, as though he didn't have enough room in his mouth to talk. Though he'd be loath to admit it, he was embarrassed. He didn't feel like himself. Watching someone go from the picture of health to someone who is too weak to perform the most basic of tasks is very difficult. Despite it all, you do your best to distract them, to make them laugh, and give them a moment of peace, and sometimes it works. Sometimes you get a small window of happiness and you hold onto it with an iron grip because you have no idea when you're going to see them smile like that again. You do your best to shoulder the burden with them as you take each day as it comes. Luckily, he was able to take steroids and he was able to move about the place better. He was feeling more energetic, he was speaking more, he even managed to do some gardening. It was a relief to see him coming back to himself. Summer was over, and it was time for me to pack my bags for my final year of college. I was to start working my ass off on my final year project that I had been planning since my third year. The mentors told us that it could be anything we wanted to do. An animation, a short movie, a documentary, and so on. There were a range of things I could have done, considering my animation course covered a number of practices, but I decided to go with what I'm strongest at: drawing. My project was going to be an illustrated A to Z guide to phobias. Everything that I had learned since my first year was to finally be implemented into what was considered my magnum opus. We were delayed by a month in getting paired with our mentors, who were tasked with guiding us through our projects, but I had already begun working on mine. It was to be an artistic interpretation of the phobias I chose, the key words being artistic interpretation. So I spent some time looking up a load of different art styles I could get inspiration from. Despite always being a month behind in our schedule, I eventually got paired with my mentors. They seemed to like what I had shown them and were curious to see where I was going to go with it, so I quickly buried myself in Pinterest boards for inspiration. That particular semester was fairly uneventful, though there were some moments when I felt as though my mentors and I were speaking entirely different languages. I'd show them the drafts I had been working on, explaining where I was going with them, expressing my concerns about maintaining a consistent art style for the book, and so on. I decided since my third year seminar that I was going to make this into a hardback book, something that I could physically hold and look through when everything was finished in May. However, after weeks and weeks of planning and researching, I was then told that a book would have been too limiting, that I should be thinking bigger. I was so confused. What was the point in pitching, researching, and planning the entire project to be a book, only to abandon the idea when I was so close to the deadline? I remember it being a cold, overcast day in November when I was packing my bags to go home for the weekend. As I was listening to music, my dad called. We were chatting about our week, catching up on things and so on, when my dad dropped a bombshell on me. The cancer had progressed to stage 4. I remember asking Dad how he felt, but I didn't hear his answer. I was in shock. I didn't know what to say. What do you say? Dad said that Granda became very quiet and pale when he heard the doctor explaining it to him, but he shook the doctor's hand in silence before he left the room to go home. Since his operation, he had been banking on the idea that he'd be fully healed by the end of the summer. The summer came and went, and he was still swollen, tender, and frustrated with his progress. It didn't matter that the doctors told him he was very lucky with where his physical health was, considering he was still able to get up, walk around, and take care of himself for the most part, when a lot of people his age would still be bedbound. He was too impatient with himself, and I don't think he could even grasp the fact that what he physically went through was a lot for the body to recover from. I can't even begin to imagine what he was feeling. Seeing him that weekend was hard because nobody knew what to say to each other, nor was he a man who outwardly expressed sappy and sentimental behaviour. At this point in the year, I was close to being off for the Christmas holidays, and I just couldn't wait to go home. I was tired and stressed from the number of projects that were expected of me. But once I moved back home, I finished them as quickly as I could. My mind needed space from it all. Every Christmas, we would have this tradition where my granddad would celebrate the day with a glass of wine at our house, talk about digging into the tasty food later that evening, and take photos before he left to do his own thing for the day. He managed a sip of 7-Up before he broke down crying, saying, "I can't relax. What's the point? I can't talk, I can't drink, and I can't eat. That was our last Christmas with him. New Year's Day had come and gone. My only wish for the next few months was to get through my last semester with some level of clear-headedness. This was the last hurdle I had to get through, so I needed to bring my A game as I had my eyes on getting a first-class honours degree. I was getting into the groove and moving along nicely with creating schedules, starting some final pieces, developing my style for the book, and feeling that I could actually do this. I was going to have my hardback book of phobias in my hands in a couple of months. It was so exciting. I was already thinking of all the promotional pictures and videos I was going to make with it. I just couldn't wait to show this thing off. It wasn't long after that my granddad was told he had less than a year to live. He was offered surgery to remove more of the cancer, but he declined, saying, "If I knew that this is what I was going to be like after surgery the first time, I wouldn't have done it at all." There was no chance of chemotherapy. He was too weak, too frail. He would have lost his walk. At this point, he hadn't eaten food in just over a year. Can you imagine that? How that must have affected his mental health. Is it really any surprise to anyone that he became so depressed? The following week, I went to college like a zombie. It was as though my body had gone into autopilot, as though I was taking a back seat mentally and was watching myself from a distance. I had a meeting with my mentors that week, and I really wasn't in any humour to go. In hindsight, I should have just taken the day off, but I was so laser focused on the project. "You need to get this finished in time" was a mantra being constantly repeated to us almost every day. Unfortunately, this meeting was the turning point for my final year experience. I explained that although I didn't have any work to show them that day, I would have it ready for the next meeting. When asked why, I divulged that I had only found out a few days ago that my granddad had less than a year to live. Their response started with, "I'm sorry to hear that," and ended with, "It's terrible you're going through this, but put some music on, relax, and try to put it to the side." I can imagine you're wondering whether I said something in return for something so dismissive and disappointing. I didn't. I was sitting there in silent shock. In that moment, I just felt incredibly hurt. After this, my passion for the project was dying. Burnout played a big role in this too. I started the project with the energy of someone who was almost jumping out of their skin from excitement, and was finishing the project with the mindset of, finish it so I can be free of it. The burnout didn't stop there, as getting conflicting advice and vague critiques left me feeling more confused and at a loss for what to do. It felt that no matter what way I approached this project, it wouldn't make my mentors entirely happy. In the end, it felt as though my project was always missing something, but I wasn't told what. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was travelling long distances each week. I was constantly trying to justify the existence of my project, as I was usually met with the same old story of, "Make it bigger, think outside the box, a book is too limiting." Living in less than desirable student accommodation, the only place I felt I had relative privacy and peace was the box room I was paying rent for. I was doing the best that I could in trying to keep my head above the water while constantly grieving a living person that was withering away in slow motion right in front of me. At the peak of my frustration, I told my mentors that I regretted picking this project. I explained, to their dismay, that I leave these meetings confused and not knowing exactly what they ask of me. If I knew that it was going to be this difficult to make a book, I really would have picked something else worthwhile. The answer I got was, it's supposed to be heard. There is a stark difference between hard and impossible, especially when the goalposts are constantly moving on you when you're about to reach a milestone. I endured the last few weeks of my last semester and moved back home at the end of April. I was beyond ready to be freed of this ridiculous Sisyphean nightmare. The big day came when I had to present the amalgamation of all of my hard work. I had to show my entire creative department, the examiners, and everyone watching the live stream my magnum opus. When my name was called and I got myself on stage to present my work, I froze. Despite practicing what I wanted to say for that entire week, memorizing the beats and timing myself the night before, I froze. I looked out at the crowd of expectant faces staring back at me, and I felt like a deer in headlights. Naturally, it doesn't help that I hate public speaking as it is, but I felt so self-conscious being on that stage and stumbling through my half-forgotten speech. My mind was racing. Don't stutter. Slow down when you're speaking. Be careful how you word this. You don't want to be docked marks. Maintain eye contact. Don't forget, you're being live streamed. Everyone is watching you. Your face is heating up. You've forgotten what you wanted to say. This doesn't make any sense. After all that practice, you forgot what you wanted to say. They don't understand this. Concentrate. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They don't get it. Don't sweat. Concentrate. You only have 10. This should have been printed. Concentrate. This should have been printed. So much time was wasted. You were robbed. Why didn't you stand up for yourself? Do not sweat. So much time was wasted. Look at what you could have had. Don't sweat. Get through this quickly and sit down. Concentrate. Get through it. Look at what you could have had. Get through this quickly. Please. You were absolutely robbed. Get through it. Just get through it. Everyone is waiting. Everyone is waiting. I never got to print the hardback book I envisioned at the start. I never got the opportunity to hand out copies of it to my department like I had hoped. What I got in the end was a PDF file I absolutely hated the sight of. A PDF that on the day I had to skim through it due to time constraints. I don't remember much of what happened during that presentation. Once I sat down, I took a shaky breath to steady myself. My heart was hammering in my chest, and I was sweating as though I had just ran a marathon. This was the last day that I was going to see my classmates until graduation, and all I wanted to do was go home. I was racked with stress. Though we had taken our pictures and said our goodbyes, I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I met my parents that evening in the caravan for a mini holiday. After they congratulated me on my presentation, I went into the bathroom to freshen up for dinner. Mum was making chicken curry, and Dad was patiently waiting to set the table, chatting idly together. I stood in the bathroom, quietly looking at myself in the mirror. One by one, the tears were flowing down my face. Trying to stop them was pointless. I was having a breakdown. I had never felt more miserable and stressed in my life. I didn't know it at the time, but that exhaustion was only the beginning. I was about to experience withdrawals from stress and burnout. It was all finally over. I was free to do whatever I wanted. All of my projects had been submitted, and I should have felt relieved. Instead, I just felt incredibly sick. I had moved back home for good. was back in familiar territory and in my safe space, and yet I still felt so wildly uncomfortable. I tried to distract myself from it by drawing something. Anything at all. But my body was rejecting that too. Now is not the time, it was telling me. Now is a time to rest. A month had passed since that presentation day. I was sitting at the kitchen table when a message popped up in the class group chat. The results had come out early. This was it. I was moments away from finding out how well I got on throughout my entire final year. All of the hard work, the long and late nights staying up to get projects finished, the amount of time spent drawing and redrawing the same things to meet impossible standards. I was finally about to get my answer. I didn't realise how much I had been poisoned and consumed by the stress of my final year project that I didn't even see that I got a first-class honours. It didn't hit me until I hugged my parents that I got the best degree I could possibly get. A first-class honours degree! I was delighted! My parents were congratulating me and telling me not to let my bad experiences leading up to this point put a stain on my achievement. That through all of that hardship I still prevailed, pushed on and passed with flying colours. I could finally begin to move on with my life. I could feel the weight beginning to lift off of my shoulders. There was nothing looming over me anymore, and I could finally breathe. To celebrate, I went on a much needed sun holiday to Spain. You both really want to. I know. Yeah. Jesus. Thoughts on that?
Terry, can we pass?
I want to go home.
No thanks.
No.
You can say it's cool, but no thanks.
Can I?
Yes, you can. I can. Okay. Again, you can.
How did you feel about courting through hell after 12 hours of it? Isn't that? What do you think? Yeah. Gather yourself, you say.
Clean up the shit part.
And you want to go on that?
I said that. No.
Life was okay at this point. Though my granddad was in and out of hospice, he was doing the best that he could. He'd swing between good days and bad days, but he was doing the best that he could. Until he couldn't. In the middle of all of this, our second dog, Sam, passed away. He had a heart murmur. Fluid buildup in his lungs was making him cough and wheeze regularly, and his heart was enlarged. His front legs were bowing out, making his walk more unstable as he got older. Despite all of this, he still maintained his friendly personality. He definitely didn't have a guard dog bone in his little body, but he made for a great companion, just as Eddie did. That's what made it harder to let him go. This time I was there for him when the three of us said our goodbyes.
What do you like?
I miss his little face and how blurry his tail got from the excitement of seeing us coming home from work. I know that wherever he is now, he's either play fighting with Eddie or having the best little tray of lasagna for his dinner. Grandad's health took a turn for the worse too. Living at home had become unsustainable for him. The medical care he needed was on a professional level that none of us could provide for him. He was in hospice care full time. It was very hard seeing him in there. His depression had completely consumed him. It was getting harder and harder to talk with him as time went on. The amount of medication he was on was ridiculous, so it's really no surprise he didn't have the energy to entertain guests. He needed to add a thickener to his drinks. His balance was worsening and he fought the notion of using a walking aid almost every day. His independence was impossible to contend with. We managed to get him back home for a couple hours to watch the All-Ireland hurling final between Limerick and Kilkenny last year, and he perked up as he lost himself in the game. Even though he couldn't pronounce his words all that well, you definitely didn't miss what he was shouting at the TV that day. When Limerick won, he was ecstatic, shouting, 4 in a row, 4 in a row, 4 in a row. Then he sat back to take in the victory of Limerick getting the Liam McCarthy Cup for the 4th time. He passed away peacefully in his hospice bed 1 month later. I spent a lot of time feeling numb and angry. Some days I'd cry quietly to myself after I'd see his lookalike walking through the city. Other days I buried myself into my phone, a book, the Xbox, just something to pull myself away from the grief. It got easier as time went on, but I can't deny the fact that there were plenty of days when I just wanted to scream until something broke. Everyone's journey with grief is different. Mine felt as though I was trying to navigate an ever-changing labyrinth that had no light. Despite this, I'm very lucky to have my loved ones to help me through what I was feeling, crying and ranting with me on the days I needed it, helping me make sense of the complicated feelings I had, and just simply being there, being a support group that I could lean on. It was nearing the end of October now. Graduation was happening in just a few hours and I needed to get myself ready. The photography session was booked, the gown was hired for the day, my camera was charged, and I just needed to get myself down there. On the way down, my parents listening to the radio and chatting quietly, I was sitting in the back seat fixing the settings on my camera. I had asked Dad to record videos whenever he could when we got down there, but really it was just to distract myself from what I was feeling. I didn't want to go back to Tralee. I didn't want to go back to a place that held a lot of bad memories for me. That coming back, it was as though I was forcing myself into a mould that I couldn't fit into anymore. I was trying my best not to cry in the car. I was texting my friend saying that I felt so nauseous. I felt really anxious, and the fact that I felt that way toward my own graduation after the achievement I had gotten that summer had me feeling so guilty. She reminded me that I had been through a lot in a short space of time, but to try and feel at ease that she and a few of my friends would be there. Once I arrived and collected my gown, I met up with them. I hadn't seen them in 5 months, and honestly, it just felt great to laugh with them in the halls that I felt so miserable in before. Soon our time slot came, and we had to be in our seats as soon as possible. I gave my phone to my parents as they took their seats across the hall. I just didn't want it near me. My mind was enough of a distraction that I just didn't need another one. The hall filled up quickly and the ceremony started. After lengthy speeches and waiting through the departments before ours, it was finally our turn. When I was lined along the side of the stage, the crowds in my periphery, I was mere moments away from getting my degree. Before I knew it, I walked across that stage, posed for the photo, and was walking back down to my seat. That was it. It was finally in my hands, presented nicely in its little laminate sheet. The rest of the ceremony was a blur. Having gotten our photos taken and having quick catch-ups before we all went our separate ways for the last time, it was time to go home. The drive back was quiet despite the deafening weight it held. I was wrecked. My feet were killing me from wearing the heels I wore all morning. Kicked off to the side, I was looking through the photos taken on my camera and answering messages from my family. I was glad to have those photos taken, forever immortalising the day just gone. The music was turned down low enough to allow conversation, but silence within the car was too hard to break. Dad pulled into a petrol station to pump up his tyres, leaving myself and Mam to chat and look over the countless photos and screenshots taken earlier that day. I was in the middle of admiring the family photo that was taken when Mam finally broke the silence. He would have been so proud of you today. I've had a lot of time to think back on the past 2 years, trying to figure out why things happened the way that they did, how I felt about college, dealing with my granddad's passing, and losing my 2 little dogs. It's been a lot to try and understand. I will admit there were plenty of choice words I used in describing how I felt about a lot of things that happened, but looking back at it now, I see a person that simply didn't know how to deal with that amount of pain all at once. It was just piling on top of me week after week. I was really struggling. But I did my best, despite the hand I was dealt. It also didn't help that I put myself on the back burner. So it was inevitable that I was going to boil over at some point. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with the college experience too. Some of it is my own fault for romanticising the idea of college from the movies I've watched. only to be let down when I see what it's actually like. Those moments you see in movies where everything is painted in gold and it sells you this beautiful image of how lovely college is going to be are in reality exactly that. Moments. College isn't going to be this aesthetically pretty image we're sold all the time, but we should treasure the moments that are.
It's not going on RT1.
So while my final year was a less than desirable experience, I still appreciate those nuggets of gold I had in the last 4 years I spent there. Nobody is going to take that away from me, especially not myself. In regards to my final year project, I don't feel much for it. Hello, my name is Kate MacDonald. I'm a 4th year animation student in MTU Kerry. My final year it lies in neutral ground. Right now, I see it as a part of my history. In the future, I might grow to appreciate it for what it is, for what it stood for, and how it came to be despite the environment it was made in. I was told I could make it into a book after I finished college, but to be completely honest with you, I've moved on. It's up on my website, and as it stands, I don't have any intention of working on it again. The passing of my granddad has been hard to deal with, but I am now in a much better place mentally than how I was a couple of months ago. We're still going through his things, which crops up a myriad of emotions and memories we've shared with him. He loved collecting records, and in his later years he loved to paint. Since finding his art books, it feels as though I'm a step closer to him now than I was when he was alive. It can be sad thinking of it like that, but I like to see it as him living on in the pictures I paint. I'll always be grateful of the memories we had with him, from roaring at hurling matches to almost giving him a heart attack when I dyed my natural blonde hair pink, purple and blue.
What in God's name did you do to your ear? Jesus, women.
With Eddie and Sam, I'm just so happy I took so many videos of them throughout the years. From when they were young pups to when they were much older, greyer adults. I miss them both a lot. I miss the excitement of them tearing through the grass as if they were starved of freedom when they'd be left out of their pen. I miss when Eddie would pester us with his little orange ball, begging for us to throw it. I miss when Sam would steal the twigs off the tree and run off with them, delighted with himself. The two of them were just the best companions I could have asked for, and although I would do anything to have one more day with them, they live on in the footage we've collected.
We made it. We're finally at the end. Oh my God, we're here, finally. That was a lot, wasn't it? 2 years worth of trauma compacted down to about, 50 minutes, I think. I think that's what it's at now. And if you've actually made it this far and you've stayed with me for this long, thank you. Honestly, it means a lot. Like, you've been through it with me. We've been through this together. No, but seriously, thank you. I really, really, really appreciate it. It's been a lot. But it was the most therapeutic thing I've done in so bloody long. Getting all of my feelings out on the page, planning the script, planning shots, like trying to get the timeline together, especially as to when things started, the date, kind of give or take time frames as to when my granddad went into hospital, when Sam was, when he passed away, everything. And even trying to get all the footage together, because I had shot a lot throughout the planning of this, like even when I was writing stuff down, I was still like videoing stuff in the background for B-roll. And it's helped me a lot. It's great. This has just been so therapeutic, and I honestly would recommend writing down what you're feeling. Like, you don't have to show it to anybody. Just write it down for yourself and just get it out. Get it out of your chest, out of your mind, just get it out of you, and just feel better then that it's out on paper and you can look at it and go, this is ridiculous, I shouldn't be going through this. But before I let you go, I do have one more thing. I have one more thing I want to talk about. I wrote myself a letter before I finished college for good, let's say, like just before graduation. And I had said to myself back then that I was going to wait a year, after graduation to read this again, but I'm too impatient. I want to read it now. So, to read out the letter, a letter to my future self 1 year from now. So, get some water. Actually, do you know what? A water break would be nice. Oh. Okay. So, a letter to my future self 1 year from now. Graduation is in less than a month. I finished my final year of college on the 5th of May after my final year project presentation. Met up with my parents for a mini holiday, got into the bathroom to freshen up and broke down crying. I have a first class honours degree, the award title in full being a Bachelor of Arts honours. I can draw proficiently. My passion is within illustration. I love to draw characters, and I'm pushing myself into creating things beyond my comfort zone. This entire video is beyond my comfort zone, but I still love it anyway. I made great connections in the industry and I have a foot in the door. So what was it that I was crying over? Was it the fact that the presentation day was 8 hours long, exhausted from having to travel over 100 kilometres at 6 in the morning to reach the venue on time? The fact that the presentation was triple weighted and I was stressing over trying to remember all of my points about the project? Maybe it was realising that the people I had grown to spend so much time with, learning their timetables and meeting up together, was finally coming to a close? Or was it the fact that I had spent the last 8 months of my life putting my head down and working tirelessly on my FYP, that now that it was over, my body was crashing from being overworked? It was a mixture of everything that I didn't even have the words to describe how it felt. Then I was met with the timeless question, what do I do with my life now? I went on holidays to Salou after getting my results, soaking in the culture, walking through the streets of Barcelona and Tarragona. I needed it after being stuck at home or inside the college walls for the last 4 years, especially with being sequestered due to the persistent COVID lockdowns during that time. Salou was great. I loved every single minute of that holiday. Then when I came home, the dread of what job do I apply for now swept over me. I looked at jobs on LinkedIn, jobs.ie, jobsireland.ie, and Indeed to try and find something I had skills in, or at least had some level of proficiency with. I was miserable, absolutely miserable, looking through the job listings that didn't match me. The likes of admin, reception work, sales and engineering jobs kept flashing into my face that each required either a degree or at least 3 to 5 years experience before applying. I was getting more and more frustrated, then turned that frustration towards myself. Why wasn't I good at any of these things, and why is it only the same trade jobs that are always advertised? My wallet was getting lighter. I was worrying about being able to support myself after college, but I managed to get my old job back. Is it glamorous? No. Does it pay the bills? Yes. Will I stay there forever? No. So what am I planning to do for right now? Rest and recuperate. 4 years straight of studying in a course has taken a toll on me mentally, more than I thought it would. I knew final year would be tough as it is for all courses around the world, but I really could have done without a lot of the undue stress. For a month after finishing my degree, I had never felt so sick and nauseous. It's something I wouldn't wish on anyone. So, what do I do with my life now? Right now, my plan is to centre myself, find my way back into the passions I had before college, read more books, play more games when I have the chance, get out more, adventure more, spend time with the people I love and cherish more. That was one of the few things I found very hard to deal with, that I was away from family and missing out on events happening at home. Taking care of myself and being more kind to myself are the top priority from here on. I will never sacrifice my health to get a project finished in the future. We get there when we get there. So to my future self, how are you feeling right now? What are you up to? I hope you've been taking better care of yourself like you said you would. So, what am I up to right now? Well, I'm actually currently looking for a new job because I was let go from my old one. So, it kind of came out of the blue, but honestly, I think it's happening for a reason. I think there's something better out there waiting for me that's like, hey Kate, we're here, come on. So yeah, that's that. I'm working on my portfolio. I'm working on this video, which has been a great distraction from the impending doom of oh my god, I don't have a job yet. It's been a great distraction. Yeah, I'm just enjoying life more. I just feel so much lighter, so much more free. My mind doesn't feel as cluttered anymore. Like even trying to think of like just anything, like what I might have done the day before. I'm sitting there kind of frozen, like what did I actually do yesterday? Whereas now I'm like, okay, I know what I did yesterday. I know what I did 5 minutes ago. I'm not as bad as I thought I was. This is great. And I honestly didn't expect college to affect my memory that much with just the stress I was under. It was unreal. I would never ever wish that on anyone. And if I could go back in time and talk to myself going through my final year, I would tell myself, for the love of God, will you please relax and actually have downtime? Because how I used to plan my week, Monday, obviously I'd be back to college. Tuesday, I would hang out with either my friends or my boyfriend, and that would just be it. There would be no college work done that day. Then every other day of the week, I would just be focused on college work. Then moving back down to the student accommodation that week, it was just work, one small day of freedom, and then work. It was so much. I would never, ever, ever do that again. Are you joking me? It's just about to start raining, and I came up here because it was sunny. The contrast of the start of the video versus now, it's fine, doesn't matter. Like I said, I would honestly tell myself, please relax, because rest and recuperation is just as important as getting your stuff done. So to anyone that is currently in college, or at any point, be it first, second, third, fourth, final year, whatever, please give yourself time to come down and like decompress. If you have like breaks in between, like just please relax, because the effect that stress has on your body it's horrendous. I really wouldn't wish it on anybody. I had a couple of health scares as well. I do think it came from college stress, and then stress about my granddad health. Like his health was just in the dumps towards the end, and then Sam passing away. I just think it all came to a head and it just came out that way. But I'm fine now, thank God. I think this is a good place to kind of leave it off, because I've said enough. I've spent the last 50 minutes telling you about my life. Instead of telling you what I've done since leaving college, how about I just show you all together?
29 and I find myself wondering what did happen to the last 10. I ran away with my life, fast forward, never turn back again. It's kind of funny that the more we pass time, the more we need to set them rewind. And 19 was the year I had to leave you, but now I'm seeing all the signs. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. I sit here looking for an answer. Maybe the biggest question was in the last chapter. You gave me the soul I have today. Without you I never could have moved away. But now I seek what you teach. I do believe I always should have stayed. Yeah. Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised as you. Is this really happening? I can't be too sure, but one day I'll be yours again. One day I'll be yours. lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life lessons come one in a dozen. The other 11 get something from nothing. Life changes just open the door. One thing's certain, I'll always be yours.
I might put on a pizza when I go home. I'm getting kind of hungry.